Hello everybody and welcome along to a brand new video where today I'm once again continuing my classic Doctor Who reviews, and this week we're reaching one of my absolute favourite classic Doctor Who stories overall. It's The Invasion. Yes, this is indeed the 8-part epic featuring Patrick Troughton as the Doctor against the Cybermen, the first in a sort of trial run for what the John Pertwee era, the third Doctor era, would become with the introduction of UNIT and more Earth-based stories and alien invasion on Earth and things like that. And this is very much the sort of template that's created for it by just giving it a go with this story to see if it works, see what sort of characters work and don't work, and just giving it a try. And for me, I think it's brilliant. Right from the off, this is a really intriguing and interesting story as we end up with sort of coming across this mysterious sort of company called International Electromatics, who are they are all very cloak and dagger, all got men in black suits and black helmets and just randomly killing people and everything like that. And it's like, this isn't what London's supposed to be. What's going on here? It's all very sort of weird and mysterious and quite sinister in tone. I think that first part, obviously animated nowadays rather than having lost the original, but still I thought very well was able to bring across that sort of feeling and atmosphere in that opening episode. The music, I think, does a great job for that. And also just the kind of periods of where there is sort of more silence and just some sort of brooding music as we're sort of looking on at these mysterious people and stuff, I think it just really kind of builds up the world that we're in. Even though it's meant to be sort of present day Earth, it still feels very, very different to what we sort of normally expect. And then of course we're introduced to Tobias Vaughn, the sort of lead, the director, whatever you call, the boss of International Electromatics, who I think is one of a proper classic Doctor Who villain. He's just got such a brilliant sort of suave way about him, where he's so kind of sort of sinister but also really sort of appearing to be nice. But in a very sort of controlling sort of way, when he's so sort of self-assured and confident in himself, but just very sort of it's almost hard to describe really. Of course, I'm sure you guys have watched the episode, and it's just such a captivating performance where he just sort of constantly feels so in control of everything that's going on around him throughout until very near the end of the story. He's very sort of calm always, and just always just sort of got things thought through. When you've got Packer, his sort of assistant and military dude, who's just constantly like, can I shoot them now? Can I shoot them? I want to kill them. Let's go and kill them all. He's always just sort of having to kind of calm Packer down and just sort of make sure that he doesn't go and do anything stupid, and just being, it's all okay, just it'll all work out, it's all part of my plan. And he's just very sort of calm and sinister about it. And I think it's such a brilliant sort of effect that's played throughout this story. And just the kind of vibe you get when you go into Vaughn's office for the first time. You've got this weird sort of almost jazzy style kind of light jazz music. You almost feel like sort of music you'd hear in a lift or something, like classic elevator music. It almost feels like it's just a sort of bizarre vibe that he gives off, in that he's sort of creating this idea that he's a very hospitable, very kind, very nice and friendly and welcoming sort of major boss of this massive company, with all these secret plans of lying underneath. So I think it's so sort of effectively portrayed and created from the very beginning of the story, and Tobias Vaughn is just a fantastic villain throughout, really. Of course, by the end he does kind of turn into your classic Doctor Who villain in terms of he's made a stupid alliance with the Cybermen. Naturally that's gone wrong, but he can't accept that it's gone wrong because he's been working at it forever, so he's trying to get revenge back on them. He won't give up, and obviously gets himself killed by the Cybermen at the end of it, which is always to be expected. But still, throughout the story, he really puts on, I think Kevin Stoney puts on such a brilliant performance as Tobias Vaughn. We saw him as Marvick Chen in Dalek's Master Plan as well, and he did a brilliant job playing off that sort of major lead villain throughout the 12-part story, and now he's got the lead in a great 8-part story as well. He properly sort of goes for the big roles in the epic stories, I think it's fair to say. And he's brilliant throughout this story. And ultimately, I think really the focus is more on Vaughn than it is on the Cybermen. Although the Cybermen are in this story, they don't turn up until the very end of episode 4. We see the first one being revived from the sewers underneath London. And then after that, they don't get huge amounts of screen time, I think it's fair to say. And they certainly don't get hardly any dialogue whatsoever. They're very much sort of used more, I think, as an army than as a real alien race who are trying to take over in that sense. We see the Cyber Planner, I think it's called, the one that's in Vaughn's office, as a sort of communication hub between whoever the cyber leader is or something like that, on the cyber spaceship in outer space, and between sort of them and Vaughn. And so they have a lot of discussion there, and we're sort of intrigued early on as to what is this mysterious Cyber Planner thingy, or this mysterious interface that he's talking into. I think it's looks like the same prop as what was used in The Wheel in Space. So I guess if people remembered back to then, they would sort of recognise and think, that's probably the Cybermen. But other than that, it doesn't become sort of particularly clear until there is one revealed at the end of episode 4, which is really sort of a great way to kind of suddenly change the story a bit after we find out who the villain really is, or who the sort of alliance that the villain is with. But as I say, yeah, they're used very much more as an army, I think, rather than being the sort of main threat of the story almost. It's all about Tobias Vaughn and his cloak and dagger company in International Electromatics, and his grand schemes to try and take over the world. He's going to try and double cross sort of the Cybermen and try and trick them into sort of taking control over all of the Earth eventually. And then, as I say, naturally falls out with them, and it all kind of falls apart a bit towards the end. But yeah, so I kind of enjoy this story more for the whole Tobias Vaughn storyline and him wanting to take over the world, the way his company is run, and the whole stuff with the unit and everything like that, more so than the Cybermen, because I don't think they are really such a key part, apart from just being an iconic villain, being put in iconic places. Of course, at the end of episode 6, the actual invasion happening when we see the Cybermen walking in front of St. Paul's Cathedral and everything like that, they are some of the most iconic shots from classic Doctor Who. They are they're synonymous with the show, really, I think, and it's absolutely brilliant. But ultimately, the Cybermen aren't really the focus of this story, I think. Of course, in this story, we get the first sort of appearance properly of the unit, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, led by the Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. Having been Colonel Lethbridge Stewart in The Web of Fear when we first met his character, he's now moved up to Brigadier and is sort of starting to set up and run this unit organisation that's going to fight aliens after having met the aliens in The Web of Fear, the Yeti and the Great Intelligence. And I think, and for me, I have to say now that the Pertwee era and the unit sort of era is probably my favourite era of classic Doctor Who. So I just love the whole sort of unit family with Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, with Benton, and then later on with Mike Yates as well, and bringing in Joe Grant into the team, and obviously Liz Shaw in season 7 as well. It's just I love the sort of family aspect of it, but also the like military aspect of it, and just sort of getting involved in sort of fighting aliens at home on the Earth and things like that, I think is just some of my favourite stories that filter out seasons 7 to 11. And so naturally I'm kind of quite positive towards this sort of a story, because it is essentially a story that you could easily slot anywhere in the Pertwee era, slot Pertwee into this story, and it would be basically the same, because it is very much, as I said at the start, the template for what they wanted to do with season 7 onwards and for the Pertwee era. Ultimately, it was due to budget cuts, or sort of to save money, really, by having more of it set on Earth. You've got less aliens, spaceships and alien worlds to try and build sets for and things like that, when you can just use the Earth and real things and use the same characters over again, the same sort of sets in terms of unit and things like that. So it was very much a sort of budget cut or budget saving method, but I think it works really, really effectively. And this story, I think, is a great sort of template for that. It is very much set up what it's like in Pertwee's era, with an invasion by an alien in the Cybermen, but also with a sort of mad genius who wants to take over the world in Tobias Vaughn as well. So you've kind of got the two different stories that are told in the Pertwee era a lot, put all into one story and thrown in with unit to sort of get it all kicked off. And I think it works so effectively as a whole package. Yes, maybe it's fair to say that it's a little bit too long at 8 episodes. There is definitely sort of elements of padding and going around in circles, and the story not progressing as fast as it easily could have done if they had less episodes. But I think that's pretty much what everybody says about every single longer classic Doctor Who story. Really, maybe it's a little bit controversial, but if it's over 4 episodes, it's probably got some padding in there to stretch it to 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 episodes. It's naturally going to have a bit of filler. But I don't think, at no point did I really watch this story and feel like it's dragging that much and like nothing's really happened and it's boring or anything like that. It really felt like a story where there was always developments going on, always things happening with the main characters and with Tobias Vaughn and the Cybermen being involved and everything like that. And it just, I think the Cybermen coming in at the end of episode 4 gave it the boost that the story just really needed to kind of take off into the second half and something a little bit different. In terms of focusing on the Cybermen down in the sewers and trying to get a picture of them. Those are the sort of things where it is a little bit elongated, in terms of we got to go into the sewers just to get a picture of a Cyberman to send off in a report to Geneva. Like, that basically took a whole episode. That is padding plus getting the Cybermen a bit more into the story. But I didn't hate that. Like, it didn't feel like a problem to this story. It was just another sort of enjoyable aspect, I thought. And then even the sort of resolution to the story right at the end, it didn't feel like it was wrapped up in 30 seconds. It did take sort of several minutes and several different things and different missiles being shot at the cyber spaceships and everything like that. And obviously Tobias Vaughn getting killed in the last episode as well. It felt like quite a satisfying conclusion, I think, because it wasn't just a click of the fingers and they've all blown up and it's the end of the world, or it's all over and it's all happy days again. It's sort of, there was a bit more involved in sort of defeating the Cybermen and defeating everything. And so I quite enjoyed that aspect to it. It just made it, I think, a satisfying way to end a very epic long story. So yes, overall this is one of my probably top 20 maybe all-time classic or all-time Doctor Who stories. It really is one of my absolute favourites. I think the score to this episode is amazing as well. It really just fits the vibe so perfectly throughout this story. All the different pieces of music really suit the sort of ominous vibe and mysterious vibe in the early episodes. That sort of weird jazzy style music that we get inside Vaughn's office, the elevator music style, I think this almost could be described as fits so perfectly, and is so iconic and synonymous with that scene, I think, now. When you see the Doctor and Jamie going into Vaughn's office, I just imagine that music every single time. It just fits, I think, so perfectly. And just, yeah, throughout this story, I think the score is really, really effective in bringing in the mystery and the excitement and the sort of end of the world as well and things like that. I think it's so effective. And yes, so overall, an absolutely brilliant story. One of my favourites. It sets up the sort of template for the Pertwee era, one of my favourite eras of the show as well. No, I wouldn't call it a great Cybermen story, but that's because this isn't really a story about the Cybermen. They're just the sort of alien to be used in this story once again. Whereas there's definitely better stories for the Cybermen, but I don't think that's a drawback because that's just not the point of this story, and that's absolutely fine. So there we go, guys. That's my overall thoughts on a brilliant Doctor Who story. Do let me know down in the comments below what you think of this story. Do you like it as much as I do? Do you think it's just a little bit too long or not that exciting? Or do you actually really, really enjoy it? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. But other than that, guys, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you again very, very soon for another one. Goodbye.